Hello, I'm Chris Pajak for the Redmen TV, and I'm joined by Forever Dortmund's Max Wendrich to talk about Jurgen Klopp. Obviously, it's now been a year Jurgen Klopp's been installed as Liverpool manager. So I wanted to get the view of a Dortmund fan to give us what you think, Max, of Jurgen Klopp. So first of all, I've got a few questions that I wanted to ask you. I'm looking at a few different categories, and we're looking back over his entire year, Max. And we're looking at the different categories that make a good manager, I suppose. So handling the press is one of those categories. Did he do too much media when he was in Germany? Was he appearing on television too much? And how did he handle the press in general?
Well, I mean, he handled it brilliantly, of course. I mean, he's an incredibly charismatic person, and I wouldn't say he handled it like too much or went into that too much. Obviously, he's very iconic. Probably by the end of his time at Dortmund, he was probably one of the most valuable marketing tools in sports, actually. Just his personality really captivated a lot of people. But I think it really has big positive effects for the team as well. I think the media has this tendency to be very relentless and, I guess, pressure a lot of players, especially in England. It's a whole nother beast than compared to Germany's. Like, you can just even see, like, with the Sam Allardyce thing, just how relentless the English media can be. Klopp really uses his charisma to sort of deflect that pressure away from the players in his interactions with the media. And I think that really just allows them to play football. And I think long term, it's really healthy for a squad, especially for young players, because you can see how good he is at bringing up these youth players. And when he's able to sort of take that pressure away from them and just let the sort of take away media distractions, it really helps them out a lot.
So we wanted to talk about atmosphere and how Klopp related with the Dortmund fans. How quickly did the fans take to Jurgen Klopp?
Well, it was quite quick, in my opinion, actually, because I think it's important to realize how bad of a situation we were in before Klopp came. We were around 13th in the table the season beforehand. We were near dead. There was actually risk of our club just being disbanded, basically. We were in terrible situation. But he came in, implemented his style, and really he connected with the fans in a way. You see his, maybe some people say his celebration is over the top, but that's really how us fans celebrate goals, and he really tries to connect with us. So you always talk about how great, I think people in general always talk about how great Dortmund's atmosphere is. We have the yellow wall, of course it's historic and everything, but before he came in, I would argue that our atmosphere was perhaps not in the best place. People were very almost depressed about our football at the time. He came in, he really connected with us, and he really just, he completely turned it around. I think the atmosphere we have today still has huge Klopp influences on it. So I think I know in Liverpool you have that new stand, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and so if he can take advantage of that and really connect with you guys, which he seems to be doing, then he can really turn around the atmosphere there too.
That's really interesting, because it's exactly what I feel. I feel that he's connected with us as Liverpool fans very, very quickly. And it could be one of the reasons that he chose Liverpool as a club to come back out of his hiatus to come to us. But you mentioned there, he obviously he's laid the foundations for that yellow wall, or what we know of the yellow wall now. Do you think he taught the fans how to be better, or do you think he guided them in any way, or do you think it was just a natural thing where he came in and everything sort of came up around that?
Yeah, I think it's more the latter there, because historically we've always had a very good atmosphere, and I think it was just sort of at the timing, the atmosphere was getting really poor. So I think he came in, and I don't think he necessarily changed it completely, but he sort of brought it back to where it used to be. I just think just overall just when the fans see him celebrate, and to see a coach who are normally supposed to be rather stone-faced and everything, just seeing him just going crazy brings this rock and roll football over, and I think that just brought this new aura of excitement around the city, and I think that was really the effect it had.
Well, I think, to be honest, I can see similarities with what's happening at Liverpool now. Another question, I suppose, regarding the atmosphere. You said he understood Dortmund. When do you think he got it? Do you think he knew Dortmund before he got there, or do you think there was a particular game or a moment when you realised that he just understood your club perfectly?
Um, Klopp's a real football man. So I think he knew it beforehand. He knows what football means to the city of Dortmund. Of course, our city is around 500,000 people. There's not much to do. Really, football is all we have, and he understands how important it is to us because football is just as important to him as it is to me or other Dortmund fans.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he really understands what it means to be at a club like Dortmund or a club. And I think there's people perhaps in the world of professional football that don't understand what it's like to be at these big clubs. And I think he just from day one, he really understood Dortmund. And from what I see at Liverpool, he really understands Liverpool and this whole, the history behind your club.
Yeah, I think I must admit everything that you're saying so far. I'm sitting here thinking, yeah, I agree with that. That's kind of what it feels like. It feels like he's doing this. So, although you can, as a Liverpool fan now, I'm thinking, oh, this is amazing, blah blah blah. And now, sort of speaking to you, I'm like, he's planned all this. He knew this was all going to happen. This is all part of his master plan. Did you feel like that with him as your manager?
Yes, of course. I mean, Jurgen Klopp is a very long-term manager. He's not like Mourinho, where he'll come in for a season, maybe perhaps win you the league in that one season, but then just turn it into a shit show afterwards, and really dissettles the atmosphere. He's a man of the plan. He'll come in and he won't go out and splash crazy amounts of money. He will look for things in players and really find a project he believes in, and he will work with that. And I think that's what he saw in Liverpool. He saw a project, a very historical club that he wanted to bring back to the top. He saw the potential in it, and that's why he went there and got some place like Chelsea or Man City, which I'm sure he could have gotten the job there if he wanted to.
I'm sure he could. And talking about his time at Dortmund, and you mentioned Chelsea and Manchester City there. Liverpool have obviously signed a lot of players just like those two clubs. There's been a ruthlessness to Jurgen Klopp as well that I found quite refreshing from a Liverpool manager. I mean, his first season, he's called a lot of players from Liverpool. We know it was the same at Dortmund. What I want to know now is moving forwards, what did he do after that first big transfer window? Was it sort of small pieces, one player, two player at a time, or did he focus on youth development? What can we expect in the next step?
Yeah, I mean, I think you were just saying it before. We had a lot of transfers when he first came in. I think this was around 30 people going in and out his first time. A lot of them were sort of fringe players. I mean, he'll really cut down players that won't contribute to the squad because he does want to create this sort of close team atmosphere. And if you have someone who really doesn't help the harmony of the squad, he'll let them go. But I mean, his first season, just the type of players he was going for and signing for, he tries to find passionate young players that he can mold into his own, something that he sees potential in. He'll never really spend a lot of money on big name players. Marco Reus is probably the only big player he ever bought at Dortmund, besides Mkhitaryan, yes. But I mean, he brought in Mats Hummels, who was a Bayern reject. He bought Shinji Kagawa, who he bought from the second division of Japan for, I think, like 200,000 euros. And Robert Lewandowski was unknown striker from the Polish league. He sees these players, like the gem in players that maybe other people don't. Even Joel Matip is already looking amazing for you guys so far. And he was, having seen him play in the Bundesliga before, he wasn't really the finished product, and he wasn't an excellent player yet, in my opinion, but you can just see how he just sees stuff in players that no one else does, and he can really just transform them.
Mm-hmm. Well,
that's what I would expect from him. Just the rest of his life at Liverpool.
Just to carry on finding these players. Now, I think one of the things we realised is that he hasn't got a scouting network in place, or his scouting network, or they might have not been looking in the right areas. Was there a particular league that he used to sign players from, or do you think he scoured the globe? As you say, he found Kagawa from Japan.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kagawa was obviously a bit of an anomaly. You don't really normally sign players from there in the second division of Japan, but I mean, for the most part, he was looking within domestically for the most part. Poland is, of course, really close to Germany, so he looked in Poland too a little bit, but mainly he would look at players perhaps even from the lower leagues of Germany. Mm-hmm. He signed Kevin Koskreutz, not a very good player now, but in his day he was decent. He got him from the third division. He'll definitely sign players domestically, but not necessarily big name players.
So his tactics, look, we know that he evolved his tactics as he went through Dortmund. Do you want to talk about the phases of what formations he was playing and how he implemented them for us?
Yeah, sure, of course. Obviously, the big formation at Dortmund with his club was the 4-2-3-1, and from what I see at Liverpool, he has been changing his formation around a little bit. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're playing a 4-3-3 at the minute. It's very similar to a 4-2-3-1, I think, with regards to pressing and stuff. We're pressing in the same way. But I think it's because of the type of players that we've got don't quite suit that
Yeah,
4-2-3-1.
yeah. I would say so. The 4-2-3-1. That's sort of his core formation, and then he did play that 4-3-3 that you guys play, too. But he isn't necessarily the manager that will um, change his formation a lot. I think once he finds the formations that he likes, he will really stick with it. Like he's not the type of manager like Pep Guardiola, maybe where he'll just put like three at the back randomly one game, stuff like that. He'll really, for the most part, stick fundamentally to the 4-2-3-1. Maybe move it around a little bit, but that's how he mainly operates.
As far as in game, what did he use? Was he good at making substitutions? Do you think he always made positive substitutions? There's a couple of times where he's made a couple of mistakes when he's making substitutions for us, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I would say if there's one criticism that Dortmund fans would have about Jurgen is that maybe he wasn't the best with substitutions. I think for us it was a little bit different because our squad was actually very thin. When he was there, we did not have good depth, and that actually probably cost us in the long run. So we didn't necessarily have a lot of great options off the bench. So I think that was actually, I hate to criticize him, of course, because he's done so much for our club, so I just hate to criticize him. But if there's one aspect of Klopp's that I had to maybe critique a little bit, it would be perhaps the substitutions.
Okay, and you know, we're saying this season so far, we've seen 3 goals that have come in almost exactly the same way. Was there a typical Klopp goal that you used to score? So for us, it's the ball coming in from the left-hand side, the striker running from centre field out to the wing, and a midfielder into the space. Is that something that you've seen a lot of?
Yes, I've seen that one many times. I would say the one I saw the most often was the classic gegenpressing goal, which is we lose the ball and then just 3 players will just crowd that opposition defender, get the ball right back, have some neat interplay, usually spread it out on the wing to Marco Reus, and then he would whip it into Lewandowski, gets that goal. That was one we saw the most often.
Was that your favourite? Was that the one that you used to
That was
love?
my favorite. Yeah, I loved that one. And before Lewandowski, it was Lucas Barrios. But yeah, that was a classic Klopp goal.
Oh, that's amazing! Like so, and I suppose another thing on formations, sticking with it. Did he ever have well, I suppose you maybe already answered this actually. Did he have a home team and an away team? Like, would he change personnel, keep the system the same, or would he ever rotate very much? I suppose I'm asking.
It's actually interesting you brought that up because the first few seasons when we did not have European football, he didn't really rotate much at all. He basically used the same team. Without those extra European games, he could play his favorite starting 11 with his high intensity tactics without the risk of them maybe getting injured or too tired. But as we started to get into European competition more, he started to rotate more, and he had to actually alter his methods a little bit because injuries were starting to come up. So it will be interesting to see how he adapts when you guys next year. I'm 100% confident you'll be playing in the Champions League next year.
Oh yes.
So it'll be interesting to see.
Hopefully,
That's
hopefully.
what you like to hear.
Of course it is. Yeah,
Um,
I'm buzzing. I think we're in a really good position at the minute, and I'm so happy that he's our manager. To be honest with you, I can't believe that he's let him go. At the end of the day, I know you were struggling, like, but the guy's just got it. He just understands everything about Liverpool. He understood everything about Dortmund, and I'm made up that we've got him and you haven't. To be perfectly honest with you, moving on to let's talk about the injuries then. Were his training methods ever questioned? You know, doing that high press all season long. Is that sustainable? Do you think Liverpool can do that for 38 games of the season?
Um, I think you can, because like I said, you don't have the European football. You do have a fair amount of depth. The fact that you can have Origi, Sturridge on the bench in your strongest team, um, I think you definitely have the depth to do it. And just your injury record doesn't seem to be too terrible right now. You see,
No,
like
not
Sadio
right
Mane
now. Not
seems
right now.
like Mane. From I've heard from Mane is that he's only gotten like one injury in the past like 2 years, and the fact is Marco Reus. I mean, he's my favorite player of all time, but he got injured so much, and even then we are able to manage in to an extent. So I think I definitely think you guys will be able to manage his injuries this season.
Where, if ever, did he let Dortmund down?
Um, I mean, I guess you could say in that last season, it was quite poor in the first half. Um, I wouldn't say let down is the right word, just because it's like, I feel like it'd be unfair on him to say he let us down, because we could be struggling in the second division instead of being one of the best teams in the world if it wasn't for Klopp. So I think let down's not the right word, but in that last season when things all went wrong, I don't necessarily blame that on Klopp. I think that just happens in football.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes it's time for a change and you have to freshen things up. I think you see it with Arsene Wenger at Arsenal. They haven't won the league in like 10 years. I don't think Wenger is necessarily a bad manager, but I think
That
the
cycle
milk
has ended,
is going a
maybe.
little bit. The cycle is sort of ending there. And you know what? This is one of the big things I respect about Klopp so much is I see Wenger staying at Arsenal for so long when he perhaps should be stepping aside. But Klopp recognized, he said, you know what, I love this club. I don't believe I'm the best man for this job anymore. I still think I'm a great manager, but I think Thomas Tuchel can come in and be the better man for the job and will be the best ultimately for this club. And I really respect him for seeing that and having the courage to do that.
Is that what he said? Did he say this is the man to take you forward?
Well, when he stepped aside, he didn't say that directly because we hadn't announced the successor right away, but it was pretty clear. And so once it got announced, he said, "Okay, I fully believe in this man. He is the guy to take you forward."
Wow.
Because Tuchel, he's our coach right now. He was considered perhaps the best up and coming coach. I think he's a tactically amazing coach. So I mean, in the end, it worked out for both of our teams that Klopp left. To be
That's
perfectly
good, isn't
honest.
it? How was he at developing young players, maybe local players from in and around Dortmund?
He was brilliant at that. If you look at Marcel Schmelzer, he's basically brought into the team by Klopp. Even Mario Götze, who, when he was working under Klopp, he best German talent since Franz Beckenbauer, which is huge. Obviously, his career has not gone to plan, but that just shows how big of an influence Klopp has. When he didn't have Klopp anymore, his Götze was perhaps not the best when it comes to pressure in media and all of that stuff. And when he lost his confidence at Guardiola, you really see how important Klopp is when it comes to young players. He's just so good at trusting them. He's so good at encouraging them. He's so good at developing them, protecting them. He's such a great asset to have when it comes to youth development. So I would definitely not be surprised if I saw a lot of Liverpool academy players coming up in the coming years and making a big impact.
Yeah, okay, that's brilliant. And what about, were there any times that you thought youth should have been given a chance, but they weren't? Or was he always focused on the next batch coming through, the next batch coming through?
Yeah, I mean, of course, every year we sell our best players and it ends up being all right. And part of that is Klopp's just his dedication to youth. You see, like when things aren't going well for the most part, he trusts youth, and I think that really helps a lot. I think in England, like you see West Ham United, they're doing so poor right now. And what I don't understand is why they're using the same players over and over again and not bringing in players like Reece Oxford into the lineup, because young players always want to prove themselves, and when they get a chance, especially if things aren't going well, they'll really want to take advantage of that opportunity. And Klopp understands how almost reliable youth players can be when it comes to taking their opportunity. So whenever it made sense to bring them on, he would always bring them on, and that's what I loved about him. He gave players a chance, and
it's
it was
refreshing, that, and just the attitude that you've got to it as well is like, why aren't they doing this? It kind of makes sense. It's not something I've ever really thought about. On to retraining in positions. Look, Liverpool at the moment, they've got James Milner playing at left back, who's a midfielder, winger throughout his career. Got Adam Lallana playing centre mid, who played further up the field. Gini Wijnaldum exactly the same. Roberto Firmino's playing as a 9. He's normally playing as a 10. Is that something that Klopp did with your players as well?
Yeah, definitely. I would say the best example is Eric Durm. He was in the World Cup squad. I'm not sure if you've heard of him, but basically, we were struggling a little bit with injuries in terms of our fullbacks at one point. We didn't have a lot of options there. Eric Durm was a striker. He played with the first team a little bit, but he mainly sort of played with the reserve team.
Mm-hmm.
So we needed an option at fullback. So he takes Durm, who is a striker, and molds him into a left back. Plays an amazing season in his debut season, converting from a striker to a left back. He gets called up to the Germany squad and becomes a World Cup winner.
Wow.
So I think that's the best example you can show. It's certainly something he does. It's very successful. From what I'm hearing is Milner is doing a much better job than Moreno.
Well. That's it. And, is that something, were they one-offs, or did he sign someone like, I don't know, did he sign a winger and convert him to a centre midfielder, or was it just with players that he'd seen, or?
Usually it was more with players we already had, but, even Aubameyang, when he signed him, he was able to mold him to be able to work with Lewandowski. So he is definitely capable of changing players around, and it's so incredible to see how he can do this with players, because who would have ever think that Milner could play left back?
I know.
He really just sees these things in players and is able to work them into a system, and that's what's great about him.
I suppose that's why he looks for the players who are willing to learn, who are passionate, who understand the game, who are clever as well. I suppose that's probably why he looks for that, so that if he needs to, he can change them.
Yeah, exactly. Like Joel Matip, he's definitely the type of player who I could see if he needs to fill in at like defensive midfield, he can. Emre Can, I feel like he's taken it up an extra level ever since Klopp came. He can play all over the field. Klopp loves those type of players, players who can really, help build a system.
Yeah, I think you're right. And Max, it's been absolutely great talking to you for this. It's been half an hour now. I've really enjoyed it. Do you want to tell everybody your channel and where they can check you out?
Yes, so my channel is Forever Dortmund TV, or a Dortmund fan channel. At the moment, we don't have fan cams or anything. Right now, we just have basically match reviews. But very soon, we should be having fan cams come out. Was the first fan channel outside of England. So it's definitely a very exciting project. So I think you guys should all check it out.
Okay, so what we'll do then is we'll put the subscribe button in the comments section below. Guys, give the video a thumbs up if you wouldn't mind. Don't forget to subscribe to the Redmen TV if you haven't already. Subscribe to Forever Dortmund. You can tell from just this chat, this guy knows more about football than a lot of us. He knows about the English League. He knows about Reece Oxford and the reserves at West Ham. And he knows about Liverpool Football Club. He knows more about Dortmund. So check his channel out as well.